In order to consider amendment number 3 printed in House Report 112-283. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in House Report number 112-283, offered by Mr. Hastings of Florida.
Pursuant to House Resolution 463, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment would exempt states from right to carry reciprocity when the state does not require individuals to apply for and complete a carry permit application at their local law enforcement station. The United States Congress should never be in the business of stripping states of the right to make their own decisions about whether to recognize other states' permits. States have put forward a considerable amount of time trying to determine just what is best for their citizenry in reference to safety. By overriding state-based concealed carry laws and forcing states to recognize concealed carry permits from every other state, we are putting our state and local law enforcement in grave danger. 2 nights ago, with the sheriff in my county, we discussed this matter. I might add a Republican sheriff who is a friend of mine. We discussed this matter and we concluded that it's going to be very difficult to get people to want to become police officers. Not only are they being attacked in reference to their organizing efforts, but now we're going to make it difficult for them to do their jobs. This amendment closes that loophole that would otherwise be created by H.R. 822. Almost every state allows concealed carry in some form, but states differ in how they implement their concealed carry policies, including having, as has been mentioned, different age requirements, training requirements, and excluding individuals guilty of certain crimes. One of these major discrepancies is addressed in this amendment and will force a state wishing to enforce H.R. 822 state reciprocity requirement to make certain carry permit applications or make sure that they are completed at an individual's local law enforcement station. In my home state of Florida, concealed carry permits may be granted to non-residents, and all applicants are allowed to apply by mail. It is so easy that a staffer in one of our offices was able to complete the form in less than 30 minutes. If H.R. 822 passes, residents and non-residents of Florida would be able to apply by mail from almost anywhere in the country and use their concealed carry permits throughout the country. Mr. Speaker, gun violence continues to grow at astounding levels in the United States. When the Surgeon General was Mr. Hatcher, he called it an epidemic and even said that it was a health crisis. So many people were killing each other with weapons. I certainly will.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment. I rise in support of it and observe that last year 70%, over 70% of Utah's concealed carry permits were issued to non-residents. And so I ask unanimous consent to add my statement to the record, and I commend the gentleman.
Thank you so much. And the last
Gentleman's statement will be covered under general leave.
Excuse me?
Gentleman's statement will be covered under general leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the last thing we need is to tell sovereign states that they are no longer free to make the decision to require an in-person interview when making a gun permit determination. At least 10 states grant law enforcement broad discretion to deny permits to carry concealed loaded guns based on an applicant's record or other factors. 14 other states grant law enforcement more limited discretion. In addition, at least 14 states require applicants to show good moral character. Many of these states require applicants to present themselves in person for interviews. For example, applicants in New York must complete an in-person interview to receive their carry permit. By contrast, Utah applicants, as has been pointed out by the ranking member, can submit their application by mail and can complete the fingerprinting and firearm safety training requirements outside of the state. In comparison, Utah's driver's license application specifically requires, and rightly so, that applicants submit the application in person, that it be notarized, and that the employee initial the application upon submission. Utah also grants permits to non-residents, potentially allowing individuals nationwide to apply for permit by mail. Supporters of H.R. 822 claim that concealed carry permits should be treated like driver's licenses. My amendment, however, points out that this is yet another instance of my friend's hypocrisy. The rest of my statement will be included, and I thank the chairman for the turn.
For the purpose, gentleman from Ohio, rise.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment would effectively gut the bill, though the intent is actually somewhat unclear. As written, the amendment allows a visitor to carry a handgun under the provisions of the bill only in states that require applications to be completed and submitted in person. However, few states have such a requirement for non-residents. This amendment would create unnecessary confusion. For example, Florida accepts applications by mail, but the state of Washington does not. If this amendment were adopted, a Virginia resident who held a valid permit could carry a handgun in Washington, which requires everyone to apply in person, but not in Florida, which has no concerns about issuing permits by mail. It is possible that the amendment was intended to allow interstate carry under the bill's provisions only for holders of permits that were issued in person. The problem is that isn't how the amendment is drafted. If it were, it would still effectively gut the bill because so few states require in-person application. The fact is that any application or fingerprinting requirements for a resident or a non-resident to obtain a concealed carry permit are in addition to all the other requirements, including a national instant background check that the applicant must go through first to legally purchase the gun. Despite what some opponents of H.R. 822 would have you believe, not everyone who owns a gun is a criminal. And in fact, there is overwhelming evidence to show that concealed carry laws have resulted in lower crime rates in most states. Typically, most criminals don't bother with legally purchasing a gun and then making sure they have a valid permit before they carry it concealed. They just do it. That's why we call them criminals. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida's time has expired. Gentleman from Florida's time has expired.
Out of time. What did you Okay, we'll yield back our time.
Goes back to the balance of his time. The question on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
And we'd like to vote on that.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Florida will be postponed.